Hey guys, tonight we descend into the smoke-lit lanes and clouded cups of the medieval village, where fear of foul wells, shaky science, and daily hunger collided in a ritual everyone thought was ordinary. Before we set off, tap like and subscribe only if you genuinely enjoy these calm, slightly eerie journeys into the past. And drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I love seeing this little night caravan stretch across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into the story together. Quick note, this episode is historical and educational. We won't glamorize drinking, and nothing here is graphic. When we mention small ale and why people preferred it to water, it's context, not encouragement. Any visuals you see will be tasteful, non-graphic, and YouTube safe. All right, step with me to the village well. The surface wears a green sheen. The taste is earth and iron, and old voices swear water carries corruption. In a house of steam and grain, our guide appears, a lean villager with a plain wooden cup, more tool than trophy. Around him, life moves to a simple spell: brew, sip, endure. The cup warms hands at dawn, mends edges at noon, and quiets aches at dusk. Taverns breathe like living creatures. Ledgers tally more than coin. And somewhere between nourishment and need lies a line so thin you could mistake it for safety. If you're ready, take a slow breath. Hear the rafters creak, the dice rattle, the song rising through smoke. Tonight we will follow one life from the first harmless sip to the last quiet street, and learn how a village built on cloudy ale taught comfort, caution, and the cost of both. Shall we begin? Part 1. The cup at the well's edge. You are born into a village that distrusts the mirror of water. The well wears a murky sheen and tastes like turned earth. The stream runs under the hooves of animals and returns clouded, secretive. Barrels that catch the sky's tears bloom with a green skin in the quiet, as if a patient curse were spreading across the surface. People do not speak of germs. They do not know the word. They speak instead of corruption and fevers that travel in invisible drafts. Old women tell you the air can settle into water and carry sorrow, or that a careless bucket can collect the spite of anyone who dipped before you. In such a world, the clearest liquid becomes the most suspicious. So your childhood is marked not by water, but by ale. Small ale, thin and clouded, the color of straw left to dream in a dark corner. The first cup is pressed to your lips before your hands are skilled enough to break a crust of bread. It does not arrive as a treat. It arrives like bread and cheese, something necessary, something ordinary, a modest hearth magic that keeps bellies from aching and spirits from wilting. The first taste is a cautious sting. Your tongue steps back and your face pinches in surprise. Your mother laughs softly and says, "You'll learn." Your father calls it warmth for the blood. Between those two sentences, a life is quietly arranged. Around you, ritual builds itself like frost on a window. Drink when you rise, when you eat, when sleep folds its wing over the house. The wooden cups sweat and stick to the table. Rings of dried ale pattern the boards like faint halos. On brewing days, the house exhales steam. The rafters hold it, and the scent of malt and yeast threads your clothes, your bedding, even your dreams. At night, when the hearth lowers its glow, a sweet sour hum lingers in the air, familiar as your own breath. No one calls it dependence. They call it ordinary. You learn quickly that not all cups are the same. Some carry a friendly softness, some end with a sharper note, and some, neighbors whisper, are stretched too far, a saving of grain that leaves the tongue with little to wrestle. Even the weak ones are favored over the well. The village is an orchestra of small ale, fathers tipping jugs with their first footstep inside the door, mothers stealing a silent sip as they pause in their work, older children lifting their cups as thoughtlessly as they lift bread. To refuse is to be strange. To accept is to belong, and so the cup becomes a compass. In summer heat, it points toward relief. In winter hunger, it points toward heaviness that feels like strength. Little by little, the body stops asking questions and begins to anticipate answers. The mind follows. A swallow becomes a signal to the day that it may begin, the way a bell might tell a monastery to rise. You would not claim to love the taste. That is not the point. The cup is not a pleasure. It is an arrangement with the world. Drink and live gently. If there is a spell at work, it is a humble one, the spell of repetition. The tongue that once recoiled begins to wait, to count the steps between you and the jug. Your hands learn the weight of a full cup and the secret tilt that spares the final grit. Your eyes learn to follow the little foam that gathers and then sighs away. None of this is remarkable, and that is precisely how it holds you. The ordinary is the strongest rope because it does not announce itself as binding. It simply weaves through every hour until the day itself tastes faintly of grain. You do not yet know the word addiction. In your village, you do not need it. You only need the next swallow and the good sense to avoid the well when the shadows on the water look like a warning. Part 2. House of Steam and Grain. As your legs lengthen and your chores grow teeth, the house becomes a quiet brewery of memory. Steam blooms in the hearth corner, and the rafters keep its secrets. The table bears pale circles where cups were set down and lifted again, like moons that faded at dawn. You run errands with sloshing jugs and return with a sleeve wet to the elbow and a tongue salted by chance. A sip becomes a gulp, becomes a bold, ordinary theft of comfort. When your mother sees the level drop lower than it should, she scolds you for clumsiness, and then, tired, lets it pass. After all, the cup is safer than the well. Between safety and thrift, safety wins. The lesson settles. Relief lives in the cloudy cup. The body remembers faster than the mind admits. When your belly pinches, the ale loosens the knot. When the day's edge bites, the ale sands it down. You do not chase joy, you court ease, and the house teaches you how. The way the cup warms the hands, the way the first breath after swallowing feels smoother, as if the chest learned a new door. Outside, the village hums to the same rhythm. A neighbor's wife is praised for her brewing. The miller's daughter is accused, gently, almost fondly, of stretching grain. Bargains are made in cups as well as coins. A man who drinks first is simply arranging himself for his labor. A woman who sips at noon is mending her strength. These sentences become shawls the whole village wears. You wrap yourself in them without thinking. In your sleep, the house speaks in the language of heat. The embers are a dull red eye. The air tastes faintly of ferment. You curl on straw and dream of rain tapping the barrel lids like fingers on a drum. In the dream, someone reaches for a cup and does not miss you. In the morning, you reach first. This is how rituals pass for weather. Unremarked, surrounding, taken as given. The cup is not an occasion. It is the background music of living. That is its subtlety and its spell. The more it stands behind everything, the more everything leans on it. On certain days, the brew turns sharper, and the mouth remembers to flinch. On others, it glides by like broth, and you lift the cup twice to make up for what it lacked. You begin to notice how your temper rises or falls with the measure. The world seems easier when the swallow arrives on time, harder when it does not. It is an invisible hourglass, and you watch the sand. If magic lives in the village, it is practical magic. Leavening, steeping, patience, heat. All the alchemy of grain. You learn it at the hearth and in the muscles of your throat. You learn it on errands where halfway home you pause behind a shed and tilt the jug for a private blessing. You learn it in the way your hand reaches for the cup before the mouth asks. That hand, yours, becomes a little creature of its own, obedient to a bell that only it can hear. And still, nothing feels dramatic. Nothing announces danger. The cup promises only this. When lifted, the day is bearable. When withheld, the day scratches. You do not imagine that a promise so small could become a chain. Part 3. When the brew grows stronger, adolescence arrives like a fog that learns to burn. Your voice cracks. Your shoulders square. The village expects arms that can carry more and hours that complain less. Along with those expectations comes the quiet exchange of your drink. The thin, small ale of childhood gives way to something heavier, a warmth that sits low in the belly like an ember you can nudge when the wind turns mean. You discover, almost by accident, that labor bends more easily when your thoughts are slightly softened. A jug before work makes the fence post less stubborn. A cup after work's end makes the back less quarrelsome. The discovery is not a thrill, it is a convenience. You begin to measure the day in pauses, each pause with its swallow. Time no longer feels like a road. It feels like a string of doorways, each with the same handle. Food is scarce enough that no one dares scold the brew for stealing its place. Bread can be thin. Meat can be rare. The pot can echo at the bottom. Allah is reliable. It fills, it warms. It convinces the mouth that it has eaten. In lean weeks, you do not argue with conviction. You drink it down and bless it with a grateful lie. Full. The body nods. The mind promises to remember the trick. Your share of the jug grows and no one stops you at first. You are taller, you work longer. Haven't you earned another swallow? Siblings mutter, then fall quiet. The village's chorus of explanations protects you. Drink is strength. Drink is safe. Drink is what goes into a body that must do a day's work and then yet another. You add your voice to that chorus. Soon you are humming it under your breath. The first sign that this warmth is more than warmth arrives one morning when your hands wake ahead of you, already trembling for the cup. You blame cold. You blame a bad night's sleep. The second sign arrives when a second swallow quiets what the first could not. A small unease clicks into place like a latch. You look to the men walking out of the tavern in the blue hour, their faces bright with laughter that seems looser than laughter has any right to be. You envy the ease in their steps, the way the bite of the world seems to glance off their shoulders. You decide to learn their secret, though you already know it. You decide to join them, though you already have. And so the days begin to blur, not in the manner of chaos, but in the manner of routine. A cup to start, work. A cup to mend, work. A cup to name the day done. Your hours become a rosary, with the same bead repeated, polished by constant passing. You tell yourself you could skip a bead any time. You do not try. Outside, the village still speaks its gentle spells. Drink to steady, drink to comfort, drink to strengthen. Inside, the ember glows a little hotter, asking for a breath. You give it one, and another. The house learns to expect the glow. Part 4. First night beneath the tavern. Smoke. The tavern door is a hinge between two worlds. You lift the latch and step into air as thick as a story. Smoke that curls under rafters like old spirits, heat that presses close as a crowd, a clatter of cups and dice that sounds like rain on a wooden roof. The floor wears rushes and traces of many nights. You remind yourself not to look down. You look up instead, to the fire's red grin, to the suspended haze where voices tangle and rise. A hand finds your shoulder, a cheerful shove forwards you into belonging. A cup appears. There is no ceremony. The tavern needs no permission to bless a newcomer. You drink. The bite is sharper here, the edge less forgiving. Your throat coughs once, then agrees to behave. Laughter greets the cough, and the laughter is kind. You try again. The second swallow slides easier, and the room tilts from intimidating to inevitable. Here, grim faces relax into wide grins, and old disagreements pause as cups touch. Games break and begin with the rhythm of the jugs. A song drifts up, catches, thickens. A grumble grows into a cheer and falls back into talk. You notice how the drink edits the night. Scuffs become jokes. Insults become jests too lazy to draw blood. For a while, long enough to convince yourself, sharp edges round off. You join the rounding. You lose the few coins you carried almost with relief. Without them, you can stop pretending to count. Another cup appears from a friend's generosity or a stranger's largesse, and soon the tavern is a tide. It lifts you. It carries you. You tell yourself to keep your feet. You tell yourself you are only learning the current, not giving yourself to it. The tide, polite as always, does not argue. There is a disorder here. Yes, an argument in a corner, a sudden shove halted by many hands, a cracked laugh that turns brittle and then dissolves. But the disorder wears a smile. You begin to believe in the smile. You begin to understand why the tavern is not called a refuge and yet behaves like one. Hours fold. The smoke becomes a season. A woman with strong arms and a steady tray threads through the crowd, nods at your empty cup with the smallest amused tilt of her mouth. You feel seen, only for the time it takes to pour. When you step outside for air, night greets you with a cool hand to the forehead. The stars seem nearer than usual, or perhaps you are nearer to them. The room's noise follows you out, softened as if by cloth. For a heartbeat, you wonder whether the village looks different from this doorway. It does not. Only you do. In the morning, you will decide that this was a good thing. Tonight, you simply return inside because returning is easier than explaining your pause. You walk home at dawn carrying the smell of smoke as if it were a new coat. Fatigue scolds your bones. Your head throbs in a language you do not yet speak. And still you tell yourself it was worth it, not for the coins lost, but for the brief, buoyant forgetting. You will return. The hinge swings easily. Part 5. A day measured in swallows soon. The morning expects its cup as firmly as the hearth expects its ash. You wake dry-mouthed, wool-headed, with a nameless thinness in your limbs that only one thing mends. The first swallow steadies the table under your hands. The second brightens the doorway. The third persuades bread to taste like food again. You call it breakfast because the village calls it that, and because words are comfort when habits begin to look like needs. Work is possible after that. Possible in the way a path becomes passable when someone has cleared the brambles. At noon, you visit the tavern not for celebration, but for repair. You promise yourself a quick one, but the bench says otherwise. Laughter makes a kind of net. You rest in it longer than intended. Sun lowers. Tools feel heavy. The day shrinks. Outside, a quiet rule governs respect. A sober man is suspected of pride. A drinker is granted the mercy of being human. You hear this rule and file it beside all the others. Drink for warmth, drink for safety, drink for strength. A wall of sayings rises around you, and you lean on it. Sobriety begins to look like a dare. You do not take it. Your sense of time alters. It does not race. It repeats. One cup becomes three, becomes a pattern. Morning thirst becomes morning medicine. Evening noise becomes evening necessity. Between them, you carry your body like a vessel with a leak that must be topped up. The topping up is no longer a choice you make. It is a chore the day assigns. At home, eyes begin to notice. The coins in the jar dwindle faster. The bread is thinner. The children watch you with a skittish silence learned from doors that close quickly. Your wife asks questions without raising her voice. You answer by tightening yours. None of it feels like a turning point. It feels like weather. You tell yourself storms pass. In the mirror of a quiet moment, you see your hands tremble when the cup is far away and steady as it nears. You do not like the mirror. You put it down. You reach for the cup instead. And the village, dear explaining village, still wraps you in phrases. It's a hard year. Everyone needs something. Better ale than illness. Better a haze than a fever. Better a laugh than a well that tastes of stone. You listen. You agree. You follow the phrases like stepping stones. And for now they hold. Part 6. The mask and the many excuses. It begins with a joke that lands a little too sharp. A cousin claps your back and says you drain a jug faster than you lift a shovel. Laughter rises and you join it, because joining is easier than explaining the small chill that runs through your chest. After the joke comes a proverb, and after the proverb comes a remedy. Everyone has one. A local healer prescribes ale for nerves, for sleep, for the stubborn aches that follow weather through the window. A cleric nods at the strength of monks who brew honestly, modestly, for the table and the rule. The village collects these sayings like charms, and you wear them like a chain of amulets against doubt. Soon you're fluent in this language of permission. If a neighbor wonders at the hour of your first cup, you call it a tonic, gentle, ordinary, safer than the well. If someone notices your sluggish mornings, you call it a passing chill, then add the old refrain, drink steadies the blood. You're not lying exactly. You are translating the ache of need into words people prefer to hear. You learn too the theater of the tavern. The way a loud laugh can move attention a little farther down the bench. The way a generous toast can turn eyes from your hand when it shakes. The way a game can scatter a question before it's fully asked. Masks are not only for feast days. They are habits of face and voice. You lift yours with practice until even you admire how well it fits. The mask is useful. It lets you pass in rooms where you have begun to feel too visible. It lets you borrow the body of a merrier man, a brighter man, a man whose cup is a choice rather than a tool. It is also tiring. When the hour grows late, the smile thins, the jokes slow, and the quiet you have avoided all evening waits for you at the door. A mask, no matter how fine, presses after a while. You tell yourself you will ease the pressure tomorrow. Start later, sip slower, count the cups. Tomorrow becomes a moving gate that the day always opens ahead of you. The village helps you keep the gate in sight and out of reach. This is not conspiracy. It is comfort. Groups are very good at protecting the promises they love. Underneath the mask, something simple is happening. The cup has shifted from pleasure to permission, from permission to requirement. You do not love that truth, so you keep the mask on a little longer. It is a courteous mask. It does not argue. It only asks for another lift of the cup and offers a practiced grin in return. Part 7. When the hearth goes. Quiet home keeps a different score. Jars empty faster. Bread thins sooner. The shoes that were promised after harvest do not arrive when frost does. Voices grow careful. Then they grow careful in another way. The way doors close softly and conversations pause when your steps sound in the lane. Silence has a weight, and you feel it each time you cross the threshold. At first, the questions are small and well-meant. Can we stretch the flower another week? Did work pay what it owed? You answer with a tired pride that sounds like flint on steel. You are providing, you say. You are steadying yourself to provide more. The words are not false. They are incomplete. Between the lines, the cup has taken a portion that no ledger shows. Tension rises like a draft under the door. Not shouting, just sharper sentences, shorter breaths, longer pauses. You begin to stay out a little later to avoid the moment when careful words turn into careful looks. The tavern, noisy as it is, offers relief from the quiet that carries meaning. There, your laugh still counts as a kind of currency. At home, the cost of it feels higher. You notice the small things first. A child who does not rush to meet you. A meal served without the old habit of placing a cup beside it. A hand that lingers near the coin jar when you reach for it. None of this is cruel. It is self-defense arranged in daily motions. You tell yourself you will fix it with a better week, a better month, when the work turns, when the weather turns, when the luck turns. The turns do not arrive on schedule. To keep worry from hardening into fear, you make promises to yourself. Modest ones, easy ones. Not tonight. Not before noon. Not before the work is well started. Some promises you keep. Many you defer until they look like another kind of promise entirely, the kind any future can carry without breaking. In the hush before sleep, the house speaks clearly. It smells of ash and labor and the patience of those who are still here. You lie awake, counting the ways intent can differ from impact. Morning comes. Routine speaks louder. The cup is close at hand. So is the door. You are not unloving. You are unmoored. It is a different kind of distance, and it lengthens in the space between one swallow and the next. Part 8. Ledgers, tallies, and the thinning purse coin makes a quiet sound when it is gone. You notice it first at the market when your fingers reach for a sum your palm cannot offer. A friendly vendor lets the balance slide, making a note with a little smile that says, "We all have thin weeks." The tavern keeper is just as neighborly at first. He knows your name. He has seen good harvests and bad ones. He pours and keeps a tally, a light mark beside a lighter mark, the arithmetic of trust. You promise to settle soon. You mean it when you say it. Meaning, however, depends upon the arrival of coin, and coin depends upon work that has been shrinking under the shadow of your pauses. The marks multiply. The measures grow shy. Smaller pores, longer waits, a brow that creases as if the ledger were writing itself too loudly. You laugh it off and buy a round when a pocket is briefly heavy, and for a night the arithmetic looks almost friendly again. When the purse will not reopen, you begin to trade other things for the comfort you cannot name aloud. A tool, a cloak, a pair of boots that can be redeemed when the season turns. You turn the losses into stories. How light you walk now, how bold the air feels without a cloak's weight. The tavern laughs with you, relieved to accept an explanation that keeps the room bright. At home, substitution is less funny. A missing tool is a missing day's task. A missing cloak is a coldback. The ledger of family has no margins for jokes. You fill the silence with hope and the cup with whatever the ledger will allow. Somewhere inside you an abacus clicks. One more night, one more loan, one more favor to be repaid when work picks up. You are building a bridge with promises. The river beneath it is wider than you remember. When the tavern keeper finally lifts his hand and leaves the cup on his side of the plank, the refusal is gentle and firm at once. The room feels different when you turn back toward it empty-handed. Laughter is still laughter, but it does not reach you as easily. The bench looks the same and somehow farther away. You stand a while at the doorway, as if air alone could become a drink. Then you step aside because doorways are meant for passing through. Dead is a teacher whose lessons are slow. It teaches you how quickly the word later becomes never, and how a tally that looked like a neighborly courtesy becomes a boundary that does not move. In its wake comes a truth you have been edging around. For the first time in many seasons, the cup cannot be reached by coin or by promise. Need, however, has not learned how to wait. Part 9. The door that stays closed, you try again on another night, with better weather, with a better smile, with a story practiced on the walk. The keeper's look is not unkind. It is finished. The room goes on without you, clattering and warm. Outside, the lane is colder than you remember. The moon is brighter, which is not always a gift. You linger where light spills through warped glass, hoping it might carry warmth. It does not. When a friend steps out with a half-full cup, you summon a grin you barely recognize and ask for a taste. Some nights the answer is generous, and you bless the world for its remaining kindness. Other nights a joke is made at your expense, harmless to them, sharp to you, and you pretend not to feel the edge. Pride is not a meal. You set it down when thirst speaks. The places that were once waypoints, market, square, the edges of benches, become a map of small attempts. You learn to spot a cup set briefly aside. You learn to intercept a measure that a busier hand might spill. You learn, most of all, how to make your need look like passing cheer instead of steady hunger. It is a trick you perform for strangers and for yourself. Nights grow longer in open air. You discover corners of the village you never studied by daylight, the lee of a barrel, the shadowed side of a shed, the strip of wall that holds a little warmth because the sun favored it earlier. You do not call this exile. You call it having your own way, and smooth the phrase with a laugh. Words can warm the hands for a while. Even in this narrowness, kindness appears. A stranger leaves a cup within your reach and looks away as if nothing had happened. A neighbor pretends not to notice that his measure returns lighter than he poured it. A child asks a question that has more curiosity than contempt. You carry these moments like coals in your pocket and hold them against the wind. But wind there is. And a door that once swung for you now holds. In its stillness you hear more than the keeper's decision. You hear the echo of all the choices that preceded it. Each small and easy, each understandable, together making a hinge that no longer bends. You do not curse the door. You stand beside it, practicing your smile, and tell yourself you will arrive on another night with coin and proof. The thought holds you upright until morning. Morning asks for a different proof. Part 10. The body's ledger. There is a bookkeeping older than coin. Your hands keep it. Your nerves keep it. Each morning the entries speak before you do. Tremor, they say. Thirst. A tightness under the ribs that unknots only when the familiar warmth returns. The first swallow eases. The second steadies. The third tells the day it may begin. On the mornings when you cannot find even one, the body writes in a harsher script. Clumsy steps, shallow breath, a skin that cannot decide if it is too cold or too warm. You tell yourself it is fatigue. You tell yourself it is weather. You tell yourself it is the natural cost of work. All of that is true sometimes, and so the lie can borrow the truth's coat and pass for it. But there is another truth beside it. Your body has learned to expect a certain note, and when it does not hear it, the whole instrument goes out of tune. A healer offers what he knows. Drain a little, he suggests, and the humors will rebalance. Rest a day and the nerves will quiet. Infuse this herb in your drink and the edge will soften. None of it stays. The relief, when it comes, is brief and conditional, dependent on the very thing that started the asking. It is like paying a debt with another debt, tidy on paper, unforgiving in practice. You begin to move through the day with a new arithmetic. How far between this swallow and the next? How many steps before the hands misbehave? How long you can stand in a conversation before your eyes ask the room for permission to sit? The world does not change to meet you. Work still needs doing. Bread still needs stretching. The lane still waits with its ordinary errands. You manage. That is the word you choose. You manage. When night comes, sleep does not always cooperate. It visits in bursts and leaves abruptly like a startled bird. You wake damp and unsure of the hour. You reach for a cup that is not there. You persuade yourself back to stillness by counting the boards in the ceiling or naming the sounds outside. Owl, draft, a cart's far wheel. It works, and then it doesn't. And then the light under the door tells you morning has arrived and the ledger will open again. None of this feels dramatic. It feels like maintenance performed on a narrow bridge during a windy season. You go on because going on is what life asks. The cost is paid quietly, one small coin at a time, until the purse of the body notices how light it has become. Part 11. Mind in the labyrinth, fatigue rearranges thoughts. So does thirst. So does the long practice of stepping around difficult truths. Together, they can turn an ordinary street into a maze of almost familiar corners. You find yourself at the church when you meant to fetch grain. You greet a neighbor twice in one stretch of road, the second greeting as surprised as the first. Time becomes elastic, hours that snap forward, pauses that lengthen beyond their polite shape. On bad nights, the mind chooses spectacle. Shadows lean just a shade too far. Sounds carry a suggestion that you cannot name. A stray dog in the lane becomes, at a glance, a memory of some other creature. A banner stirring at the church door looks like a hand beckoning. A whisper behind you resolves into nothing when you turn. You know the tricks minds will play when the body is worn thin and worry runs in circles. Knowing is not always an antidote. People speak, as people will, about spirits and punishments and the way weakness invites what should be kept outside. You are not sure you believe them. You are not sure you don't. What you do know is simpler. The mind wants rest and gentleness and a place to set down its load. Those are exactly the things the cup used to lend you easily. Now it lends them briefly and charges interest. There are days when clarity returns in a rush, and the square feels crisp, and the errands line up obediently, and the mind hums like a well-tuned wheel. You clutch those days like gifts and promise to stack them one upon another until a better season is built. Then another elastic hour arrives and pulls the promise long and thin. You forgive yourself because forgiving is kinder than scolding, and kindness keeps the next day possible. In the town's talk you sense a shift, from teasing to caution, from inclusion to a polite circle that closes just before you arrive. No malice, only distance. You admire their gentleness even as you ache at its edge. A mind that is tired learns to sit on the steps of its own house and watch the street go by. You practice that art. You become good at it. You tell yourself stillness is wisdom. Sometimes mercifully it is. Part 12. The alley with no name one afternoon. The ledger comes due all at once. You set out with the usual plan, this errand, that promise, a small visit to the place that used to be your second room, and the day answers differently. Steps miscount, breath shortens. The wall you lean on feels less firm than it should. You choose a narrow place between houses to gather yourself. A pocket of shade you have used before. The pocket does not hold. You lower yourself to the stones to let the world stop spinning. It does not. The air stays near and far at once. Sounds arrive from a distance you cannot measure. You practice the tricks that have worked in other seasons. Slow breaths, a palm against your ribs, the steadying thought that this will pass as other spells have passed. The tricks are kind. They are also late. People come and go in the lane. Some cast a brief glance, habit, curiosity, a note of concern, then continue because their hands are full and the hour has already chosen their pace. A pair of children point and are shushed. A neighbor slows and then speeds again. A vendor hesitates and then remembers she has promised bread to a dozen waiting kitchens. No malice, only motion. You do not blame them. You too have hurried past others in other hours. Life is a river. It carries. As light changes, your strength thins. There is a moment, long or short, you cannot tell, when the urge to reach for a cup simply fades, not in victory, but in quiet. A clarity as soft as dusk settles. You understand something that should have been obvious. Not every ledger is meant to be balanced by the one who kept it. Some are closed by the world around them, gently without ceremony. The thought is not bitter. It is oddly calm. You lean your head against the cool of the stone and let the day go on without you. In that small surrender there is unexpectedly a kind of peace. Not triumphant, not theatrical, just the peace that arrives when a season ends because the season has ended. The lane narrows into evening. The work of the village continues on its ordinary paths. Your breath follows its own. Part 13. Two silences morning finds you where night left you, and a passerby pauses long enough to see what the evening hid. Word crosses the square on the same routes that carry news of prices and weather. No gathering, no spectacle. Only a few practical hands who know what must be done when a life is finished and there is no family ready to shoulder the last duty. They do it without fuss. The village is good at quiet tasks. There is no bell. Those are for other ceremonies. There is no line of mourners. Those are for other stories. There is, however, a small unmarked corner where many such endings have been laid down with the same care. Not with celebration, not with blame, simply with the understanding that returning to earth is the last common work. The ground receives what it has always promised to receive. The grass in time keeps the promise it always keeps. Memory behaves the way grass does. It grows where the light falls. It thins where footsteps press it. For a week, your name appears in comparisons and warnings and the kind of rueful anecdotes people tell when they need to agree that some roads should be walked more carefully. Then a new piece of weather arrives, or a birth, or a price change at the mill, and conversation turns, as it must, as it always has. At home, the air warms. Bread stretches farther. The tension in the beams eases because worry has stopped pacing there. Relief is not joy, but it is a kind of kindness to those who stayed. They carry on, and carrying on is not indifference. It is their form of prayer. Even the tavern folds your absence into the room the way it folds spilled drink into the rushes. Not dismissively, simply inevitably. A place built for noise will always be better at noise than at remembering. The ledger that once held your marks feeds the hearth and becomes warmth for someone else's hands. The bench holds a different weight. The song chooses a different harmony. Nothing here is cruel. Nothing here is sentimental. Between those two nothings, the village lives. In that living, the shape you once cast grows softer, then fades, and the square is itself again. Part 14. Coda. The thinnest line. This is not the cup raised in festival paintings. It is the cup passed hand to hand because the well is uncertain and the day is long. In such a world, most learn to steady themselves on the thin edge between nourishment and need. Some slip. The edge is thinner than it looks, and no one walks it alone. You were offered the same ordinary magic everyone was offered. Grain transformed by heat and patience into something that could stand in for food, comfort, and safety. You used that magic faithfully until it asked more than it gave. Even then, the village sang the songs that make difficulty bearable. Better a little blur than a hard ache. Better a friendly room than a lonely bench. Better the known warmth than the strange chill of the well. Those songs were not lies. They were incomplete truths, as most songs are. What remains when the cup is set down for the last time is not a lesson engraved in iron, but a softer teaching. That rituals shape us more quietly than we notice. That excuses often begin as kindness. That laughter can be a lantern and also a screen. That families need gentleness as much as bread. That ledgers keep more than numbers. That doors close slowly and then all at once. That bodies and minds keep books. We should read earlier if we can. Above all, what remains is the recognition that this story, though it ends in a narrow place, belongs to a wider one. People everywhere finding ways to make hard water gentler, to make long work bearable, to make nights kinder to sleep. In the medieval village, ale became one such way. It was both food and fog, both medicine and mirage. To tell the story plainly is not to shame the past. It is to understand it, and in understanding, to be kinder to anyone today who feels the same thin edge under their feet. If your own steps feel unsteady in any age, may you find better wells, truer comforts, and hands that pull you back to the safer part of the path. If you came to this tale for the hush and the history, may you leave with both and with the quiet knowledge that remembering is its own small resistance to forgetting.